I didn't realize how many chair action sorts of things changed. There's a lot to be done here. Not seeing anything. Is that turned on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. This just worked last time. Let's see. Yeah. Well, sometimes I have to do the.
Your thing doesn't seem to see the second one right now, right?
Pardon?
That time it's off. It seems like you're on. So yeah.
So what was that all about?
Just, did you try turning it on again? I think that's it.
It's time. So we're our customary 3 minutes past the start time. This is the CIDR working group. If that's not what you wanted to listen to, now's the time to go find what you would like to listen to. If you want to just sit in the back and read your email, that's fine too. This is the second of 2 sessions, and the usual Notewell stuff. This is the official version. This was an attempt a while back to summarize the version. And then there's a proposed new version. You may know that with each subsequent version, the number of things they think that you need to read has gone up. Our usual set of resources, the data tracker, the tools page, the Jabber, the Metico, all available from this slide. There's an audio feed as well if you can't do Metico, but just about everybody can. We need Jabber Scribe and minutes takers. We can't proceed without them. And Sue, who has volunteered so many times, is not here. So we need a minute. And John speaks for Jabber. Thank you very much. And is there anyone who can be a minutes taker? Sriram volunteers to be a minutes taker. If you can use the Etherpad tool that's accessible from the tools page, other people can contribute as you're going along and add their name if you don't know it and that sort of thing. Yes.
I see the notes from last week. It's the same thing.
Yes, I believe so. So I'm not going to go through the status one by one. Some activity this morning to change things, tags in the data and judge the consensus on working group last call and adoption. I did not get to a message that said the adverse actions adoption call was clearly in favor of adoption of the working group. So I will send that out so the authors can submit the new version with the official working group name and such. So today's agenda has expanded somewhat from what we thought it was going to be on Monday. We have Thomas King is going to be a Metico remote presenter. We've had that work before, and I'm looking forward to another successful remote presentation. Declan Mon will talking about the relying parties requirements, and Yufu, am I pronouncing that properly? Thank you. We'll be talking, and then some future discussions about what's going to happen after we talk about the adverse actions. Okay, so first we should have Thomas, and I don't know how to coordinate that activity.
He's on, so maybe we do this.
Video and all.
Speak up.
Thank you very much, Mr. King.
Say something. Make a noise.
Oops, we don't hear anything.
2 chairs. Press the red button to mute or unmute.
Hold on just a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, wait.
Perfect. So, hello, this is Thomas.
Good.
You're preparing the slides, right? I will show them.
Nope, wrong one.
Hello, can you still?
Going again. And there. There we go.
Okay, slides are up.
Great. So let me start. This work is called Signal and Prefix Origin Validation Results from a Route Server to Peers, and this is co-work together with the authors here on the list. Next slide, please. Let me quickly motivate why we started this work. The main motivation was to increase the security of the networking system, and we wanted to boost the acceptance of and usage of API-based prefix origin validation. And as all co-authors and authors of this draft wanted to increase the data quality provided at route servers at IXPs, we thought about how we can combine that. And, next slide, please. So in a typical IXP environment, you have the IXP here as a cloud, and you have routers connected to a route server through a eBGP session. Next slide. Usually the routers, at least currently or nowadays, do not support prefix origin validation so far, especially because these routers are usually replaced every 3 to 5 years, depending on the replacement strategy of the owners. Next slide. But route servers already provide prefix origin validation, so the idea is how can we distribute the validation results from the route server back to the routers connected to the IXP. Next slide, please. Next. So the good thing is there's already an internet draft proposal out there that exactly describes how to use an extended community to signal prefix origin validation results within an IBGP case. And what we wanted to do is use that draft and enhance it for the eBGP case. Next slide. And then we in a scenario where we get the validation results distributed to all the routers connected to the IXP, and though we can enhance the internet, the security of the internet routing system. And that's exactly what this draft is all about. This is how it works. Next slide. So, when we look at what we did in the past is that the guys from UTX, and Forza X and other IXP discussed this idea or actually the idea just presented, and we were talking about how we could implement this in a way that it scales and is operational visible. And this discussion actually started in one of the first EuroX meetings in 2015, and we quickly realized that there's another draft that provides already the mechanisms we need. And so we started discussion with the guys from this draft and asked them if they could enhance their documents so that the IBGP case is also supported. And in the latest version of the document, version 8, it is already covering that change. And on this, at the same time, we started also working on our inter-draft in terms of the route server concept and how that should be addressed, and we submitted the version 00 to the SIDR working group. And we already had quite some discussion on the mailing list, and I will summarize the results on the next slide. Next, please. Though the requests from the mailing list were actually threefold so far. We had a naming issue, which is already fixed in the latest version of the document. There was a reference that was not correctly set. We changed that as well. And Spiram pointed out that we should signal, or we should at least discuss what to do if the route server is not able to validate updates and does not add the extended community to an update. So how should a peer receiving this update without the extended community handle that update in terms of prefix origin validation? And actually that discussion is still ongoing. It's not finished yet. We're still discussing it on the mailing list. If you have input on that, please contribute. And the next step I would like to see is if we could ask the working group for working group adoption. I assume we should take that to the mailing list. So next slide, and it's actually my final slide, is we are looking for feedback and comments and also questions about the draft. And yeah, any input is highly appreciated. That's pretty much from my side. Any questions?
Okay. Anyone have comments in the room? Go to the mic, please.
Mauricio Viejo from Costa Rica. Thomas, thank you very much for a nice presentation. It's great to see more people is getting on board to enable RPKI validation. In our case, we managed the Costa Rica's National Internet Exchange Point, and in May 2015, we enabled origin validation in the IXP. Has been a great experience, and it's also allowed us not only to create a trust island for our customers, but also even to organize them better. We had some experiences where they were even announcing all prefixes for all customers, and just enabling RPKI within the IXP allowed to get the routing more organized within the country. So it's great to see that the efforts are going through and now in big IXPs like yours. So it's very glad to hear that. And also the Ecuadorian draft that was sent by Fabián Mejías in OPSEC was very useful for us, and it's a great experience, which is documented on that draft. So it could be also a good source of, for the study. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for your comment. I think it was not a question, but it's good to hear that you already have this kind of prefix origin validation running. So could you do me a favor and drop me an email that we can get in contact and discuss the draft a little bit further in detail?
Be glad. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Any more questions?
This is Sriram from NIST. So regarding the comment about the what to use in the community value when the IXP does not do any validation, I think your response was good on the list. I meant to respond back. So essentially, I think it's a good idea to not have the community, and that should convey the message that it was not validated. It could be as simple as that. And I didn't want not found, for example, as the default. I don't think you are doing that. As long as that is not the default, it would work fine, right?
Right, I completely agree. Not found shouldn't be the default. And we have to find a way to signal that if the route server, for whatever reason, cannot provide a validation result, we should convey this information somehow. And as you are saying, I think we should just leave it out and come up with a text describing how the peer receiving that update should handle that. And I think we just discussed that on the main list a bit. And if we agree on that, I will add the text.
Yeah, right. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Doug Montgomery, also with NIST. I'd like to suggest that just removing the attribute doesn't allow you to distinguish whether the feature has been administratively turned off or that you have some failure to access repositories. And so in other contexts, we've discussed that a fourth value, unable to validate, actually has a use and signals information that you couldn't tell otherwise.
Yeah, you are right. We thought about adding that a fourth value, but the thing is, we are building up on the other internet draft that covers only 3 states, and that's used for the internal BGP case. And we didn't want to add a fourth value because in this case we would enhance the existing concept and proposal. But if there is enough demand for that, we would change that definitely.
Rüdiger Volk. Not really judging whether you should extend or not. My understanding of how policy specifications actually are done in routers, I'm pretty sure that a not yet classified attribute will be much better than nothing. The kind of matching for a specific attribute is much easier than to say not the 3 others.
Thanks for the feedback. Go ahead.
We have a reference implementation for RPKI origin validation, and I think already 3 years ago we started to introduce an internal fourth value undefined, because there are multiple. There's a reason for that, because there are some statuses where you cannot automatically just give a value. So for instance, if I pull new ROAs, for example, and a ROA comes in, then if I react right away to this ROA can validate or change the validation state of other updates to an extent that I change my routing decision. Now the second ROA that comes in would change this validation again, and I would introduce kind of a flapping. And that was, I had some discussions with Rüdiger back then. That is one thing. The other thing is, if I power up my router and I say, for example, at the beginning, I don't know what the status is. I don't have any connectivity to the validation cache. Now I could say, by default, I say everything is valid. Then I pull everything and work on that. But if I want to make a distinction between valid and I have really no idea what it is, then the force state makes sense. We actually, in our reference implementation, we went this one step further and allowed enabling the distribution of the validation state also in eBGP, not only in IBGP. And if I remember correctly, we also transmit the force state. But I think in general, a force state, even though if it is not in the validation RFC, I think is a good idea to really have a deep look, because there, from my point of view, there's a big demand.
Oh, so I got your message. What I will do is I will talk to the authors of the other draft and discuss with them if it makes sense to add a fourth status to convey this message. And I think that should be possible, because in their case, it might be also helpful.
John Scudder here. It makes me very, very sad that these comments didn't come up during working group last call for the validation signaling draft, but since it hasn't yet gone to RFC, I think that yeah, we should consider putting the fourth state in, or at least I am not yet completely, I don't think I've completely understood why we need it, but I will go back and look on the list. If you've already sent your comments to the list about why we need it, if you haven't sent your comments to the list about that, please write them up and send them to the list, and I think we should take a look at it. I mean, I should also ask the chairs what they think we should do.
Sandy Murphy Parsons, I'm not going to stand up and go to the mic. I also am sort of puzzled as to what you would do differently with the fourth state. So anyone who sees that as an advantage, I'd appreciate an example. It doesn't have to be now, it can be on the list.
On the bucket list. I don't think that there has to be, how can I say it? I think a force state is something that the operator, or it's just a tool where you can make your own decision what you want to do with this. So, for example, if you have policies where you say, I drop everything except if it's valid. If you have the force state, you could think of maybe, okay, I don't select it, but I also don't throw it out of my rep, for example. You know, you keep it in kind of a holding state until you have one of the three real states. So I think it's, I know it's a little bit of a slippery slope what you want to do with this, but I think that, I mean, Rüdiger has complete different reasons why he wants to have it, why I have it, but we both agree, I think, that we need.
Yeah, well, okay. The thing is, actually, whether a route has been classified or not is actually relevant information. And keeping out the fourth state for coding that essentially reduces the information I can use for defining my policy. And I don't appreciate that the IETF says, well, okay, you should not have that information available.
Okay.
And imply whatever the IETF decides for me to be the right policy to apply in that state, in that case. And also, I may have a network where a part of my edge is RPKI enabled and another part is not. And as the IBGP distributes stuff around, well, okay, actually, I personally would be coding the states myself anyway. So the draft doesn't matter for me. Yeah, but I certainly would code that information and take note of it in my policy.
Montgomery, maybe related to that comment, one simple thing you can do in IBGP, right, is maybe one side of your ISP is running off of one cache, you're running off of another, and you get signaled that that side, for whatever reason, the cache is down. So one thing that you could do with the explicit signal that it wasn't validated is validate it. You could decide to do origin validation.
Okay. Sandy Murphy Parsons again. I believe that I have seen Looking Glass sites that are Juniper routers that do report the validation state when as some particular validation is not turned on here kind of condition. I'm sorry to be so vague.
You're not being vague, Jeff Oz. So the code was updated to add origin validation support. The default status in the absence of it being set is unverified. So if you don't have the feature even enabled, it still will show unverified. You actually do support it and have RPKI router configured, you can actually set it to verified or not.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, thank you for doing a remote presentation. And it sounds like we're going to have a good mailing list discussion here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
And if I read your slide correctly, you're asking for working group adoption?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. All right. There we go. Okay, now I have this correct. Yes.
Good afternoon, folks. My topic today is requirements for RPKI reliant parties. By the way, the motivation to do this is triggered by Tim's draft. That is RPK repository validation by using local cache. So next slide. Well, here we go. Problem statement. So as we all know, the RPK has been well-framed and standardized via a number of IFC documents, but we can't help but realize that there is no document that describes RPK reliant party technical requirements in one place. Although we have three popular reliant party implementations, such as RIPE NCC validator, RPK.net, and BBN RPSDUS. Okay, so as an insider, one may easily find the concept of RPK reliant party in IFC 6480. So granted, reliant party is imposed by certificate and CIL profile and the specifications of roles, manifest, and trust anchor locators. Okay. So it would be good to have one document that collects all the requirements that have relevant that have reference to all the relevant IFC which have the real technical requirements of reliant parties. So Steve and I therefore are proposing to consolidate reliant party requirements in one document with pointer to all the relevant IFC. Okay. Next slide. So what would this document be like? Are we going to define RPK reliant party? No, there is no standard language in this document. Okay, are we going to do collecting? Yes, indeed. And this document outlines reliant party functions and then summarize them and then give reference to those precise sections and paragraphs. So, conspicuously, this document will be updated to reflect a new version of these relevant RFC documents. Next slide, please. Okay. As far as the reliant party was designed, the basic function engaging reliant party could be divided into 4 categories. They are fetching and caching RPK repository objects, certificate and CI processing, process signed objects, and delivering the validated cache to the BGP speakers. So in alignment with this classification, the outline of this very document is as follows. Okay, so since we haven't uploaded the document, so let me give an example of this document as for dealing with algorithm transition. Okay, so in our document, the description of dealing with algorithm transition would be the set of cryptographic algorithm used with RPK is expected to change over time. Each reliant party is expected to be aware of the milestones established for the algorithm transition and what actions are required at every juncture. Reliant party requirements for dealing with algorithm transition are specified in Section 4 of IFC 60-16. Okay, that's it. Okay, so okay, next slide. Okay. Among others, I believe how to make use of manifest data is very important because to our observation, different reliant party software and implementations will perform functionally different in reaction to a stale manifest. So yeah, it's very important. So we add this section needs more consideration in our work. So next slide, please. Plan. Well, we'll soon submit the document. So actually, I believe the IETF draft submission tool is open now. But anyway, we'll soon submit. And any input, the authors will appreciate any input to move forward this work. So thank you very much.
Any comments?
Yes, happens to see. We recently started writing a document that describes how exactly we do validation in our case, and it came up in discussion that it would be useful to have maybe a common document, possibly written between the implementers of validation software, to see if we can identify the commonalities and have a standards track document rather than a informational document that describes relying parties also do validation. I think there is value in that, and I'm wondering how that relates to this.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That was my question. How does that relate to that document that we kind of formally about that you may well want to work on in the near future?
So I beg your pardon. I can't clearly understand your question. Does anybody could repeat? Okay.
You're saying you didn't quite understand the question?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Tim.
Tim, can you say again?
Yes.
Slowly.
Let me try to paraphrase. So we have already started work on a document, an informational document that describes how we currently do validation in our implementation. And there's been talk about making a common document that could likely be a standards track that describes how validation must be done. And I'm wondering how that would relate to a requirements document that you're now proposing.
Okay. Actually, this document is not intended to specify the concrete implementation of reliant party softwares. We are trying to do here is to provide a framework of the basic functions of reliant parties. So I noticed your draft talking about how write NCC validator to deal with assigned objects validator. So maybe this document could be very, very simple and abstract.
Well, you showed various things about having references to where in the documents all the definitions exist about requirements surrounding manifest, CRL, etc. So that triggered me. But to be constructive, what I can imagine that could work is that, for example, a document such as this references another document where we talk specifically about validation, and this document takes a bit more high level, high level view on this, and looks at the broad context of what relying parties should be aware of and other aspects.
Oh, dear folk. Yes, well, okay. I was also thinking, what's the relation between what you are doing and what Tim presented yesterday, and we started to discuss kind of. One could take the general approach at looking at all the stuff and try to embed the specific information that Tim has. Actually, I would be quite happy if each of the implementations comes with a clear and comprehensive explanation of what the specific implementation is doing. And well, okay, there certainly are several ways to skin the cat. And it probably would be a good thing to have something that essentially lists all the considerations and the options so that one can compare what are particular implementations actually doing, how are they doing, what gaps are there potentially. And we should expect that, well, okay, no implementation will actually do everything. So coming out of the manual of an implementation, I don't get the overview of the whole problem field. So yes, there might be a value in explaining the whole problem field. The relation between the different tracks of documents should be very clear. And well, okay, I would say at the moment it is not really clear what kind and number of documents we will in the end see.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Volk. Okay, to answer your question, I have two things to share. One is about the scope that this document. Okay, one is the relationship with our document with Tim's draft. Okay, so I believe this document have a more scope. Would you please go back to the outline? Yes. Okay. For example, this sorry. This document discuss delivering validated cache to BGP speakers and yes, this is just one example, so which is not in Tim's draft. Okay. Just one example. Okay. So the other thing is about you mentioned about the implementations. So this document is intended as a summary of the summary and digest of all the IFC documents related to Reliant Party requirements. So it will not go into the every detail of Reliant Party, how to react to alumni, react to yeah, some stuff.
Randy Bush, Dragon Research Labs. I think this is fine theory. I think the users and implementers benefit greatly for Tim's document. We gladly, time permitting, which I cannot guess, either complement or join Tim's document. I think documenting how the current relying parties that people are using validate is really, really needed. And so I think Tim's document was excellent, and it's a little embarrassing we haven't got one out, and I'm not sure we will because of time constraints.
I don't understand the question. One more time with the question, please.
Could you get closer to the mic and repeat that? I'm not really.
Or speak a little bit louder.
Yeah.
It's a rare ask.
Rarely does anybody ask me to speak more loudly. I think high-level theory is fine. Fine, go, enjoy. I think we owe it to the users to document what Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. How far do I rewind? Oh, Christ. I think this is cute in theory, and it's nice to have this high-level kind of stuff, but I think the implementers owe the users of the current deployed relying party software, mostly RIPEs and Dragons, document validation. And I think that's Rudiger's point, but I just want to say it real clear. What I can't say is that we will have the time to do so.
Okay. Thank you. That was much more clear. There's some mechanics of the mics going on for those who are remote. So, any other questions? All right. So we'll put the question to the list as to whether or not, once we have a draft to look at, right?
Yes.
Then we'll put the question to the list as to whether or not this is adopted. Okay, so can you adjust it for her?
Yeah. Also, why don't you do this so we have a.
Oh, it's here. Okay.
Put that in there. You guys can ask you some questions.
Hold
on. Hold this.
Thank you.
Okay. Speak directly.
Hello, everyone. This draft is about the RPK deployment considerations. I'm Yu from CINIC. So the background of this draft is that in China, we are trying to deploy the RPKI this year. So we have some tests in our countries. So we want to share our experience and some considerations in the working group to share the information and to share the experience to our groups. Next, please. Okay, thank you. So that's the background. We have deployed RPKI in China. The CINIC have deployed a platform to provide RPKI service. We call that the RPKI pilot service in China. You can find the website is this v6pilot.cn. We can provide RPKI service to our subscribers. So the RPKI in our world, as we know that each of the 5 RAIs has initiated deployment of RPKI. So, and each now offers RPKI service to its members. A number of countries such as Ecuador and Japan, China, so on and so forth have also started to test and deploy RPKI internally in order to promote deployment. So we of RPKI, and the 5 RRs, mainly NIRs and companies have making continuous efforts to solve the existing problems and improve the corresponding policies and technical standards. So, but however, with the RPKI still in its early stages of global deployment, and according to the data provided by the RPKI dashboard as January 2016, the current routing table holds about 628,858 IP prefixes in total. And the RPKI validation state has been determined for some IP prefix, and which means that only 6.29% of the prefix in the routing table can be validated using the RPKI. So we have write some considerations during our deployment and to share these considerations to the group, and also we give some suggested solutions for these considerations. The first consideration is the more than one TA. This consideration is about there is no technical mechanism to prevent 2 or more TAs from asserting control over the same set of INRs accidentally or maliciously. And this kind of problem obviously may cause resource conflicts on the internet. We give some suggestions for these problems, and is that the RARs are trying to continue evolve RPKI, so including the migration to a single global trust anchor as the root of the RPKI hierarchical structure. And with this single root trust anchor deployed, the risk of the resource conflicts at the level of IR certificates could be significantly reduced. And the second consideration is the problem of the CAs. The first problem is the operational errors. The operation errors by CA are inevitable. When we deploy the RPKI in our country, we have analyzed that the CA's operation errors may cause significant impact on internet routing. For example, an error in using an ROA, maybe adding a new and erroneous ROA or breaking an existing ROA may cause all rules covered by the original ROA to become invalid or to assume an unknown security status. The second problem of CA is the unilateral resource revocation. In the RPKI architecture, there is a risk that CAs have the power to unilaterally to revoke an INRs which have been allocated to their descendants just by revoking corresponding the CA certificates. And the result of this can be significant, as especially ORPs will view the origin assertions by the CA and the descendants to be invalid. This may cause ISPs to depreference rules to the affected prefix. And the third problem of CA is the mirror world attacks. As malicious CA presents one view of the RPK repository, which manages to some RPs and a different view to others, because the repository data can be cached by ISPs, and it may not be possible for malicious CA to provide the error results to a narrowly tagged set of RPs. And when these deceived RPs offer the validation results to BGP routers, the routers may abandon the negative made routes that are considered to be invalid according to the wrong validation results they have received. And maybe some solutions for these problems is that Stephen have proposed the suspenders to design and to address adverse effects on the INR holders which were caused by CAs and accident or deliberate misbehavior or attacks on the CAs and the repositories. So these mechanisms impose two objects. The one is Internet number resource declaration, and another is a log object. So the INRD file is external to the RPK repository, and it contains the most recent changes that were made by the INR holders. So whenever the RPs detect the inconsistency between the actual change and the INRD files, they can determine whether to accept this change or not. The third consideration is about the data synchronization. So it's required in the RFC 6480 that all repository must be accessible via rsync protocol, which is used by RPs to get RPK objects in the global distributed or repositories. But the rsync protocol maybe have some disadvantages. We have analyzed 3 disadvantages: is lack of standards and non-modular implementation, and not good enough in efficiency and scalability and security. The third is N9 overhead caused by the repository updates during the active data transmissions. So the solutions for suggested some solutions for the data synchronization is the RDP, which presented in the Monday, is for RP to keep their local caches in sync with the repository storage system. So this new protocol is based on the notification, snapshot, and detail files compared with the rsync protocol. RRDP is considered to be effective to animate a number of inconsistency related issues, help to reduce the load on publication servers and have higher scalability. In our scenic the NAM, we have some proposed and improved rsync protocol, and in this rsync improved protocol, we have a mechanism which transfers the work of checksums calculation to RPs in order to reduce the computation load on the rsync server side. So this mechanism also offered a notified method that send the notify message to make some important RPs to actively fetch the updated RPKI objects in time. Also, because it's at the early stage of the RPKI in deployment, and maybe we have some incomplete deployment. So since the global deployment of RPKI is incremental and the staged process, some unexpected problems maybe appear during this process. In this example, we have shown that, just an example to show that it may cause some legitimate routes to be misclassified into invalid. In this example, we have can think that the SYNIC ISP1, ISP2, and the ISP3, the ISP1 and ISP2 have allocation resources from SYNIC, and SYNIC from resource allocation to appendix, and the ISP3 have the resource allocation from ISP1. But only SYNIC and ISP1 and ISP2 have deployed the RPKI. So this may be cause some problem to ISP3. This example can be illustrated that the careful coordinations must be made to the non-leaf sub ISPs for the RPKI deployment, maybe cause some problems as the validation considerations. So I'm not sure whether a draft of the RPKI considerations is useful for this group to some ISPs or some subnodes to have some deployment considerations. And I'm not sure, so comments are welcome. Thank you.
Hi, this is Carlos from LACNIC. I have two different types of comments. On one side, I think this is valuable work. I think it mixes a bit of what the adverse actions draft is trying to do. And I think it makes sense to focus this document particularly on the deployment, on the challenge of, or your analysis of deployment.
Yeah.
This is one comment.
Yeah.
The other series of comments that I have for you is that I appreciate your recognition of the work that has been done in other regions, but I believe that the document needs to be more careful in the way some terms are used. You mentioned, for example, that 18% of LACNIC members have RPKI, which is certainly not true. The word member in the context of an IRR has a very specific meaning. Basically, someone who has signed a membership contract with the IRR. Certainly not 18% of our members have RPKI. That would mean around 2,000 organizations, which is certainly not the case. What we have is an adoption rate of more or less 18% of the IPv4 space we have allocated. But if you measure that in terms of members, I can tell you that it's much less. The other thing is when you mention the projects, for example, in Ecuador, and also, for example, the project in Costa Rica that Mauricio brought up, you mentioned that this is a country initiative and that could be interpreted as having some connection to a government, which certainly it does not. And I would very much appreciate that to be perfectly clear, because we don't want these projects to be associated with governments for the greater good of the future of RPKI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The first, I think I should appreciate your comments for this work is useful, and I think the content of this draft maybe we can update it as your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, Tim Reisers. So to echo, yeah. So Tim Bruisels, Ripe NCC. Yeah, that sounds better. I appreciate that you are working on RPKI deployment and that you're sharing your findings and concerns. On the actual content, I do have some other thoughts, but I'm not sure that we have the time to go into each thing right here. So I would reserve that for a bit later, actually. But yeah, thank you. If that's okay, because yeah, there's a long list. I don't really want to go through each slide and then take a lot of time here, but I would be very interested in having a talk at least.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sandy Murphy, Parsons, the slide where you talked about some of the deployment that has happened, we heard about the Costa Rica. Is there anything more that you want to say about that now? About the Costa Rica experience? You asked, never mind. Okay. I am looking at the person who brought up the Costa Rican experience. So I'm also interested if anybody has anything to say about the Japanese deployment experience that you mentioned.
We have some communication with Japanic. So the Japanic have deployed RPKI in their country, but also in the, I think in the platform testbed. We also have some communication about the interface for the RPKI deployment. We are sharing the experience. I think this work is very useful as I think the RPKI protocol is very now is very the RFC is very how to say it have more RFCs, but I think in now the deployment is in the early stage, so this work can give some experience as the countries or some ISPs to process to accelerate the in process of the RPKI deployment. So I think this is a meaningful work. Thank you.
Okay. So some of the things that you brought up have been issues in the working group and have solutions underway in the working group. The validation reconsidered addresses some of the points you made about SCA. And the RRDP, which you mentioned. So I'm not certain what you're proposing in this draft. Are you proposing alternate solutions to the ones that are currently under discussion?
I think the proportion is maybe the protocol is not the previous protocol, and because it's I think the suggested solutions will be the like RRDP. I have mentioned that is the group have make the consistent about the protocol, as these solutions may I think can be proposed in the draft.
Not sure I understood that, so I'll try to parse it later. Okay, someone's behind me. So.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Mauricio from NIC Costa Rica. So basically, it'll be interesting to add more details about the experiences that have been successful within the either IXPs, the same rears as well, and also probably from an ISP perspective, so that they can also include details from the challenges that could be faced at that moment. So in cases and the purpose of the document is informational, it'll be valuable to add that information. Right?
Okay, thank you.
One particular point that you made said that a CA might revoke all the resources that was associated with an ISP.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that an ISP that has a customer that has left them that the ISP should be prevented from recovering the resources of that customer? Are you suggesting a mechanism that would prevent a CA from revoking a certificate?
I think not such that suggestion. If the CA want to revoke the resources, I think maybe there is a mechanism to negotiation with his subscribers. Another is to maybe notify his subscriber that he want to revoke the resource. So the first, I think, first the CAs must to let the sub node know that he want to revoke the resource.
Right.
That is important, I think.
So you're suggesting just a notification to the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
So it wasn't clear from your discussion of the object that it was a discretionary, it wasn't clear that there was, it appeared to me that you were suggesting that the CA would be prevented by the customer. That's not the case? That's good to hear.
Yeah. But I think the first, I want to make sure whether the work group think this work is meaningful, and the next, so the next to update the draft as the solutions, and we can have some discussions in the mailing list.
Excuse me, Chris, could you tap my... Oh, okay, all right, I'll have to go up there. Right, I understand. So the next, the next step is, we'll see what the working group adoption call goes like. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ready?
Randy Bush, Dragon Research Labs. I think my discomfort here comes from it not being current with the technology and not, it seems to be the result of a lack of communication with other people deploying, like JP Nick. Who's my Nick? I come from Japan. I think the draft and maybe your effort would benefit from more cooperation and communication.
Yeah, if I make you uncomfort, I'm sorry. Because every year we have my colleagues have some communication meetings with Japanic. I'm not sure if we can, if you participate the meetings.
It's not just the Japanese. A whole bunch of us are deploying it, and a whole bunch of us have developed the software, and so on and so forth. And it's just, you know, to see arsenic doesn't work because it doesn't perform well. Where are the numbers? Justify that, please. Slide 9, I think it was. But we don't need to go into the detail. Nah, whatever. I don't care. Just, this is a collection of stuff that many of us have seen and experienced. Some have documented. RRDP is there because of real measurements, right? Tim and crew did real measurements of arsenic. So more substance, more protein, and more current.
I think I will make more communication with you. Sorry.
But I'm sure, Randy, it's not unwelcome. I would be curious. I would be curious to actually get more details of what you actually are doing in your test bed, and what your ideas of actually creating service and how to connect with the rest of the world are. You mentioned a pilot, and I think I did not hear a lot of details about it, and I would be extremely curious about the stuff there. Another thing that I would suggest, if you talk about RPKI deployment, actually I would strongly suggest to be quite distinguishing and specific about what deployment. RPKI deployment has several parts that to a large extent are actually independent. And kind of running a CA is a thing. Delegating CAs is a thing. Actually having people getting certificates and managing their ROAs with a certain CA is a thing. And the various uses of RPKI information by relying party is different things. And when you talk about deployment and do statistics, well, okay, you actually should be distinguishing, else one does not get serious information and only fuzzy notion something is happening. Huh?
So I think your suggestion is very useful. I will update our draft according to your suggestions and add this content to this draft. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to talk about adverse actions. The responses to the adoption call were positive. It appears the working group would like to adopt this as a working group item. But one issue was raised about a comparison of the things that might happen in RPKI with the things that might happen in an IRR. And since we have our routing AD in the room, I did ask what he thought was an appropriate way to deal with that. I can summarize what you told me, or you can speak for yourself as you wish. Okay, so you said that trying to do a point-by-point comparison of the actions to IRR portrayed the two technologies too much as competitors, and there is a routing policy IRR discussion in an RFC published in the GROW working group, and that it might be best to simply have a summarized statement saying similar issues appear, and here's a reference, rather than a point-by-point.
Hi, Alvaro Rutana, AD. Yeah, I remember what I told you. I think what you told me was that the draft made comparisons and said, here's something that may happen with the RPKI, and it may also happen with the IRR. And what I said is that if that draft is talking about one topic, it should focus on that topic. We shouldn't start comparing it with other things. That's it. So I think that's all.
Okay. Comment?
Yes. Speaking as a co-author of the adverse action draft, I think Randy and the team's comments to the IR issue were making good sense.
Say that again.
Randy and the team's comment on the comparison between the IR and adverse action, RPKI, were making good sense. I think it's necessary to include a simple clarification that RPK compared with IR, RPK is not even worse. We just do presenting something may go wrong with the RPK.
Okay.
That's all.
Um,
And
we'll
I
have
don't.
to-
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, we'll have to be certain that our routing AD doesn't think that we are outstepping the bounds of our charter to craft that statement carefully. Anyone else?
Sandy, sorry. Sandy, I think since this draft will be adopted, so I think we could talk this after we authors updated the draft as a working group item, and then we have chance to talk how to handle this issue.
Yes.
Okay.
Working group consensus always. Yes. Okay. Rudiger, did you have something? No? Okay.
Whoops. Okay, so I'm Chris. I'm a co-chair. Alvaro came out, asked us to discuss this sort of the state of CIDR today or tomorrow. It looks like we basically have all the charter items covered by current things in flight or as RFCs. So unless we want to decide to recharter and make ourselves more work, there's not a lot of work left to do. So provided list of docs, I was supposed to fill that in, gets done, and we don't assign any more new items of work today or in the next couple of weeks, we're kind of at a point where we should decide what to do next, right? Should we close down the working group and ask for ops and security group ADs to generate new working groups in their space to cover particular types of items, like, hey, when security stuff pops up about the CIDR protocol changes, could the security area please have a working group to discuss those? In the ops area, when Randy says, "Oh, this crazy ops thing is crazy, make it work better," yes, have somebody like, not grow, but please don't put it in grow. Somebody like a grow type working group pick up that work and push forward with some reasonable operational documents about this. We could also disband the working group itself, but keep the mailing list around to sort of field questions and redirect 302 to the right place. In other words, shovel stuff towards security and say, hey, security guys, you need to solve this problem. Or, hey, ops guys, you need to solve this problem. Spin up a working group over there to do it. Or perhaps even if it's routing related, spin up a working group in the routing area for a specific task. The last thing is we could just, wash our hands and walk away and say, we're all done. I don't think the last one is particularly practical. So it's mostly just to have a third. Go ahead, Randy.
Randy, we don't need the grow working group. We need the shrink working group. Whereas it's very tempting to put this infinite game out of its mercy. We do have a bunch of stuff on the table.
Yep.
And at our current rate of progress, it's going to take a while.
Right. So I think.
So I don't think. Yeah, but they're old propeller planes. They're not jets.
I get that. Alvaro, in the meeting, Alvaro said, well, in 6 months or maybe a year. And I said, well, whatever. I think the point is.
He comes from a vendor. He's optimistic.
I understand. In the end of the day, I think his point is don't take any more work items, put on a real schedule and try and kick people to get stuff done in a reasonable period of time.
I think that's brilliant. We just haven't got a good track record of doing
Okay,
so.
I totally agree. We suck at that part of it. But I think the sentiment isn't bad, right? That's
Actually, I think it would be fair to ask for anybody who thinks we should start adopting new work items, et cetera, to speak up now. Otherwise, let's just.
Okay, well, I think the real discussion for this was supposed to be at the end. So let's see. I got only, I think, one more slide. This basically says what I said before. The slides are online. You can read them. It's not fancy. I might have actually spelled everything correctly. So the last bit of discussion is this part, which Randy started. I'm happy to open the floor to discussion. I think that from my perspective, not accepting new work items and working through what we have is probably not a 12-month process, but I hope it's not a 24-month process. At the end of the day, that's probably what has to happen anyway. So let's see. Go. I don't know who got there first.
Jeff Haas. So speaking as the chair of a working group that does bursts of work and then goes quiet for a while, dormant is a valid state. It's okay for the working group to still exist, to still have chairs, to still have a mailing list, and simply do no work for a while. And it's, especially a good time to wind things down. Yeah, so don't disband, just shut down for a while. And one of the reasons I suggest that particularly is for much the same reason that BFD really should not shut down is you need a place to focus the expertise and for this stuff, the operational stuff and the security stuff is honestly too expert level to just throw off at somebody else's feet.
Okay, that seems.
Do you see a difference between keeping the working group dormant and a mailing list that people could direct attention to, and disbanding the working group, but having the mailing list stay alive?
The difference is that there still are chairs. You just simply don't have any actual work. So there's responsibility to do dispatch. There's encouragement for people to sort of monitor things, to answer questions, because your goal long term is if you expect this stuff to be a living thing. And I think even if BGPSec itself does not become a living thing, there's potentially long-term future for things out of RPKI. You want a place for that expertise to continue to live. And then if there's some need for it to spin back up, everybody's still here.
Jeff Houston, look, I appreciate in the IETF saying let's not do something is the equivalent of mouthing obscene profanities. That this group just can't let things drop. But you should. You really, really should. There is no routing input in this stuff. There's no logical reason for any of the current extant drafts or any of the work we're looking to be cited in the routing area. We're sort of over that. So there's a bunch of crypto stuff. And part of it is this whole discussion about how and why you distribute credentials around a distributed network. Ops maybe? Probably. There's a bunch of other discussions about the performance of the current system. That's really, really, really ops. There's no point keeping this around. Let it die. It's been going on for what, 10, 12 years? That's long enough. Kill it. Wash your hands. Declare success and move on. Remaining work logically fits inside other areas that can focus on those bits of remaining work. You've done it. There's no need to prolong this agony. Stop it.
I should just say, not particularly to Jeff, but to the room in general, people discussing, I don't care either way.
Neither do I, but you want the discussion.
Okay,
right?
yeah. So right. So your point is not aimed at me or maybe even Sandy. It's aimed at the group in general.
Totally not aimed at you, but I do observe, I kind of wonder why the group is sitting inside the routing area where there is nothing that I've heard in the session earlier and today's session that has the remotest thing to do with routing.
Yeah, see, I feel that we're again.
Just grab the whole thing and lift it up, man. Stop playing around. It's not attached to the ground, is it?
That's all. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I have a feeling that a lot of the issues that we're talking about are related to operations currently. One thing I can think of that is maybe more core, well, maybe not even routing, but crypto is if we would want to make a standard document that really defines in one place how validation works. That's something that could still be useful. Whether you need the whole working group to do that, like this working group, I don't know. Yeah. So I guess in short, I have a feeling that a lot of the work is done, and a lot of the technology is ready for to be built on in our other areas, and well, especially operations will need attention going forward.
Daniel. Okay, yep, we are good. Sean's going to go right to the front one. He's not going to deal with this. So, Daniel, I spent a lot of time looking at deployment issues. And when it comes into situations like this with a working group, I always find myself a little bit conflicted, because I think there is a stage when the IETF is done with the standards, they're done, baked, all good, here we are, published, and we go on. And then those standards get out and start to be deployed, and we start to look and realize, oh, there's something more we need to do. There's this, oh, this thing that we thought worked great in 2016, in 2017 doesn't really turn out to work in the real world networks as it gets deployed, or as it gets brought into different other networks, or used in ways that we didn't quite think of during the development of the protocol. And so I think that we've done this in the past with keeping a mailing list around, and that works to a certain level to continue the collection of people who understand. I mean, that's one of the big challenges, right, is that you have the people who actually understand the standards and protocols. You need to keep some of that group together. So I think that there's value in having that mailing list. I think the idea, if CIDR's done with its work, then, close on one level. If there's a place to go for some of this newfound knowledge that comes in, and yes, it could just go to ops area or something like that, but, maybe it's CIDR ops, I don't know what that is, or something, but or some place that continues to have that collection of people that will be able to provide input in it. It's just my observation has been that sometimes we've closed stuff, and then we have all this operational knowledge that needs to feed back into the standards creation process and change and improve it, that has nowhere to go. So I would just encourage us to really think through, where does that stuff go as we gain that experience. And Sean's antsy, so I'm going to shut up and let him talk.
Hi, Sean Turner, former area director that killed off like a working group that was around for 19 years. It's really kind of hard to start a working group in the IETF. It's even harder in some respects to close one out. And what you basically have to do is say no, and then get an area director or two to be like, if something comes through that's really, really important, I can AD sponsor it. You keep the list alive, you can have the argument there, and then the area director maybe has to do a little extra work to judge consensus. You're still going to get a 4-week last call. You can fix any imperative fixes to the protocol that really have to be done. We can do things quickly, sure, if we really want to, but we can do that. To me, it seems like we should draw a line, say we're done, close it out. If we want to change crypto algorithms, we can ask the SEC area. If you want to do ops stuff, you can take it to ops. There's already an ops area working group where you can just publish documents through there. I think we've got many tools in place to allow us to close this down. We just have to get, I guess there's got to be a consensus, or the area director can do what I did, which is say we're done.
You from Cynic. As I just said that it is in the early deployment for the RPKI. So we are not sure whether they'll have problems when we deployment in our world for the RPKI. If we have problems, technical problems, we need a place to have discussions for this problem, and we together could have some mechanism or some discussion method to resolve this problem. So I think we really need a place to have discussions. Thank you.
Wes George. I'm less worried about needing a place for operational discussions for RPKI, and well, more specifically, origin validation.
Mm-hmm.
I am more concerned about what goes on with BGP-SEC. I'm not going to say one way or the other what that looks like, but I think we don't have any deployment, we don't have any implementation. Maybe the right thing to do there is to declare that protocol experimental. And if someone deploys it and we find problems with it later, we can revisit it recharter a group that is specifically chartered with addressing the problems that were found in the experimental deployments and moving on from there. But I don't think we actually have enough ground speed to have that take off at this point. And I don't think there's any reason to keep the working group open while we wait for it.
Carlos Flagnick. I'm all for the split. I think it's really useful to be able to focus on operational experience and protocol maintenance on the parts that are actually being deployed. Thanks.
Wes Herdiger, Parsons. Yeah, I don't know. You know, we've been at this place in so many working groups, and it never really feels right. But I will say that I agree with my previous esteemed colleague that said that BGPSec is sort of needs the help. You know, it's not quite out the door enough. I don't think it should go experimental, however, because there are two working implementations that are interoperable. So, you know, there are some work out there, and usually the track for experimental is because we're not quite sure if it's right. I think seems like pretty general consensus that BGPSec is fairly well defined and nailed down. In fact, the most recent draft has changes in it due to the fact that the interoperable implementations agreed together that it was the right thing to do. So it doesn't feel like experimental to me. It should feel proposed. And you can always rewrite proposed if you find a mistake later. But experimental means, you know, we really don't know, and I think we do.
Wes George. Okay, so misspoke on the implementations. I think there has been ongoing background discussion about whether it's actually deployable and usable at scale. Because we can build sort of lab-based PET implementations and show that the protocol more or less does what it says on the tin, doesn't actually demonstrate what I'm saying. And that's sort of what I think that speaks to exactly what I said about experimental.
Russ White, LinkedIn.
Speak up,
We're
please.
deeply involved in BGPSec right now for various reasons, and I agree with Wes that the protocol spec may,
For reference, he
No,
means
sorry.
West George, not West
West
Herdiger.
George, yeah. So I think the spec is solid and it's probably useful, but I don't see how it's deployable in my network, and I don't see other people deploying it in their networks at scale. So calling it a standard seems premature to me. It seems more likely to call it experimental and then see what people do.
Wes Herdiger again. I would say that every protocol ever developed in the IETF, we don't know if it's going to scale. You know, that's not something that you determine by labeling it experimental. It is, there is a huge number of things where we've actually fixed scalability afterwards. Look at HTTP and the number of tricks we make in order to get, you know, that protocol out and deployed to the level it is. Look at what we do, you know, with DNS and a whole bunch of other technologies that we learn about the scalability issues afterwards. And sure, there could be a problem. There could be a problem with HTTP 2 that we don't know yet. I don't think that one's going to be the case, but it's possible. The IETF produces a ton of protocols that we don't know until after deployment happens that you know, scalability turns out to need some tweaks.
Andy Bush, Dragon Research. John,
Speak into the mic.
stuff-
Speak into the mic, please.
how much stuff that's in IDR today on standards track is widely scaled and deployed? How's FlowSpec going?
Jared Mach from NTT. FlowSpec is deployed in a number of networks and has been for a long time. It's beyond the hobby science project that a lot of the CIDR work is still kind of sitting in. And I think that is, the big difference that a lot of us see here is that it's one thing to kind of hit this one piece, and you know, what we're talking about here, you know, there's so many networks that have actually deployed FlowSpec. You can, now I'm leaving up for discussion as a separate item whether or not all the current drafts in IDR are worthwhile, because I think that, you know, I would argue the jury is out on that. But for what is actually being deployed and being used, you know, FlowSpec has been out there for more than a decade, whereas this is still very much in a corner area of the network when you talk about the CIDR RPKI infrastructure today?
John Scudder. Randy, since you asked, I think, Jared said everything that needed to be said to your question, or everything I would have said anyway. Just since I'm at the mic anyway, the only thing I will add is, are we deciding whether to paint the bike shed experimental or PS instead of answering your question about what to do with the group?
Yeah, I think that is partly true. We answered the wrong question in the last 6 comments, but it's probably valuable input to the AD regardless.
So from my perspective, as an operator, you can tell me it may be deployable in 5 years if people play with it and do stuff, but I've sliced the financial pie any way I can think of slicing it, and I don't see any way to deploy BGP-SEC in my network, and that really is what it comes down to for me. So the working group can disagree with me, that's fine, but I mean, I have 1,000 eBGP peers, and I can't see how I can replace them financially with stuff that would do this. So that's my only.
Wes George, I apologize if I wasn't clear in the reason that I drew the distinction between BGP-SEC and experimental and closing down the working group, was that if you look at a BGP-SEC as something that is a proposed standard and expected to be deployed, there needs to be a working group there to support it as it actually moves into its first actual deployments. There's an open question about which working group that is, but it needs to be there. If, as I'm asserting and some others are asserting, this is not baked enough for it to be anything but experimental, that suggests that there is some room to say, let's close CIDR down, and if we need to revisit this later, we recharter a group with that. So I'm sorry if that dragged us off into the weeds, but that was the point I was trying to make.
So just let me clarify before you walk away. So what you're saying is, essentially, you would like to have somebody to call when there are problems and you need either operational or security assistance with that.
No, I think that we probably didn't get it completely right the first time. And there is going to be some maintenance work required.
Sure. Okay. So I think the commitment from the AD has been, we'll find somebody to call. So they'll be there. It may not be CIDR working group under the routing area. But I mean, well, I'm just trying to clarify, because if that's really all you want is someone to call, he's kind of committed to doing that.
Yeah,
Well,
like I said, I don't think it's a matter of wanting somebody to call. There are plenty of folks who will be happy to take my money and prolong the problem for as long as necessary. What I meant was, what are we?
You have money?
What I meant was that if there are tweaks necessary to the protocol, that's something that has a sort of a defined set of requirements around what working group does it and how. That's not something that lives in a generic ops working group.
Sure, but he's already said we will spin a group if the things need to be fixed. I mean,
I don't think that we're disagreeing, Chris. I'm just trying to provide some.
Sorry, I'm missing. I was missing something.
I'm just trying to provide some color in terms of what makes sense, and based on what might be remaining work.
Jeff has, and I quote from 2026, "The experimental designation typically denotes a specification that is part of some research or development effort." Do we think that applies to BGP-SEC? I don't think this is researchy. We think this is for the circumstances that we're trying to actually secure the protocol against, man in the middle, etc. This is the right thing to do. I don't think that experimental is the right status for it. Proposed standards, fine. It could even be for no protocol that goes dead. There could be protocols that need to be revised, as I was just harping over here. BGP went through 1, 2, and 3 before we got it right. And arguably, with the number of extensions we've had, it wasn't right at number 4.
Wes Herdiger Parsons again. So bringing back to the question at hand, because I was one of the people that helped derail it. I've been sitting here thinking, and the reality is it seems like this question is one IETF too early. It's like, if I'm thinking about what might happen with both RPKI and possibly BGPSec, I think BGPSec is going to sit on the shelf for a while longer before, it needs more implementations and stuff. We're not going to hear about it, regardless of what its status is, until people start tinkering with it. That's not going to be within 3 months. The RPKI, on the other hand, still has other stuff going, but even the BGPSec draft, even if it goes, it has a little bit of work before it gets out as a number, right? To me, we ought to be asking this question in Berlin, possibly the one after that, but I think it seems too early. I feel like there's too much unknown that might happen in the next 3 months, where the working group is still doing stuff. We had a full meeting. We have 2 meeting slots used at this IETF, right? That doesn't seem like a silent working group to me yet.
Yeah. So just to be fair, I think Jeff brought up a good point earlier that there's a number of the things that we talked about, actually probably everything we talked about in the first meeting on Monday and today, that really could have gone into an ops group, right? I mean, it would have been perfectly happy. UFU's document sounds like an ops document to me, but we don't have an ops group to shovel it to except for ops area working group. So, I mean, just to keep in mind, we could still talk about CIDR stuff.
Randy, still at Dragon Research. With one of the straggling drafts, or probably more than one, but I'm thinking of BGPSec ops. It's got ops, it's got crypto, it's got protocol, it's got security. This has always been an intersection working group. Carving it into 19 pieces will, just like reorganizing your organization back home into 19 silos, is not going to improve communication. The point is that we don't need all this much anymore to get those final documents out, but we do need a place to discuss them. A mailing list is fine. As Sean said, we've been to this movie 100 times. We channel the working group down. We have a mailing list. We close it and roll it. Any of that's fine. We just have some work to get done. But, the full weight of a working group,
So Rudiger, and then I would ask Alvaro to come up, just because I have a question.
Yeah, Oliver. Yes, splitting up stuff does not make sense. I think the notion that was aired that, well, okay, we are a little bit premature for closing down and deciding, I would +1 quite clearly. My take is that, well, okay, until we are actually seeing a little bit more progress in really deployable BGPSec implementations, I would like to see the group still in place, and well, okay, after that, rather going dormant than completely disbanded. Having a few heads that can do a little bit of focusing, I think has benefits, as opposed to, yes, there is an open mailing list, and well, okay, there is no clear organizing focus person. Well, yes, if the question is really important and the routing area directors are completely overloaded with caring for CIDR, moving the group to ops or security or something else, I think would not matter a lot.
The question I was going to ask Alvaro is it fair to have the same conversation in Berlin, or did you get enough information to make an informed guess?
So I think, Albert, I think it's important, the information that we got. I think we need to discuss it probably in the list a little bit, just to make sure that everyone puts what's in there. I think we probably need to have a conversation to, with all the information before that. That doesn't mean that we won't get to Berlin and still talk about it. But, I don't want to say stop now or stop later. Definitely, we need to go through the whole process anyways.
Okay.
And as Sean said, it's not like I have the magic button and we just close and that's it.
You can't?
Well, there is a button that I can push, yes. But we need to, it's not a fancy red button like the one you have there, but we need to still do some more.
So may I ask for one clarification? None of these options imply closing the working group before the drafts that are currently on the list are done or declared dead.
So there are obviously several options. And, one of the things is what are we going to do going forward beyond what's already on the list, right? And actually, Sean mentioned, the fact that I can AD sponsor everything that's left, for example, right? So we don't necessarily need you guys to go through the process of working group last call and everything else. I could take care of that. Having the list, having some discussion on the list, doing the IETF last call, etc. So again, it's all relative to the important thing is that we need to finish the work, right? We're not going to stop the work. We just need to make the decision whether we do it through the working group or we do it AD sponsored, right? But if there is consensus to publish what's there, we're going to publish what's there.
Okay.
John?
I look like John, but I'm actually Russ Mundy from the chat room. He says, it seems to me that the AS path item in the charter really has not been met since the specs and deployment of BGP-SEC still seem very incomplete.
Okay. Anything else? Like shed color decision?
Alvaro, that you had one other topic that you wanted to address, which was the intended status of the BGP-SEC protocol, which actually came up. Do you want to? Okay.
Hi, Alvaro Tanedi. So there was this other item in the agenda to talk about the status of BGP-SEC. I maybe should have talked to Wes before. He brought up a good point around the maintainability of the spec if it goes to PS. So what I want to talk about is I want to ask the working group to consider publishing BGP-SEC as experimental. In fact, I want to strongly urge to publish as experimental. The reasons behind this for me are a couple. One is that, and I think many of you said it now, the deployment of BGP-SEC probably won't happen soon. Soon maybe implies a relatively short time frame. I think the time frame is going to be relatively large. Judging from the adoption of the RPKI, for example, despite the great efforts from LACNIC or RIPE-NCC and others on educating customers, there was this ROA signing party this morning. It's still the maximum 18% that LACNIC has. So it's going to take a while. I'm assuming also, of course, that people will adopt RPKI, do origin validation, and then eventually go to path validation. The other thing that you guys mentioned as well is that there isn't operational experience. This operational experience at scale, of course. This change affects a core internet protocol, and it implies, of course, operational changes as well. So that's why I think that this should be an experimental draft. I understand from 2026, from what Jeff read before, it doesn't precisely match the definition. There's only three things we can do, right? Standard, experimental, and informational. Informational 2026 actually says that it's a document without consensus, which I don't think that's true either. So, either we paint it experimental or proposed standard. Again, I think, and I'm asking the working group to think as well, that this should be experimental. So what I want to do, given that maybe we want to go to the next session, we still have time, but given that already some of you discussed this as well and expressed your opinion, What I would like to hear first is a hum, and then we can discuss it if you want to talk about it. So I want to hear a hum of the people who think we should continue down the proposed standard track. Okay. So how about now the people who think that we should go with experimental for BGP-SEC? Okay, anyone has any comments? Okay, so because we want this to be a working decision, we obviously want to discuss on the list. The document completed last call last week. It still hasn't been asked for publication. The document itself says standards track. The data tracker doesn't actually have an official position on what it should be. So what I want to ask the chairs is to have a discussion over the next, I don't know, week or two, and then come to a conclusion as to how that document is going to progress. Okay, thank you.
Okay, failing anybody else bring work items?
I actually.
Oh, Sandy has something.
Sandy Murphy Parsons, speaking as a regular old member. I shortly, not too long before the start of the meeting, suddenly came to the realization that being here, the right set of people to answer the question were probably going to be in the room. I had a question about the validity dates, the validity times of certificates that have resources that are reissued with additional resources. So I'd appreciate anybody who knows what their implementation does would let me know. Would discuss it on the list, actually. Okay, John has something else from the Jabber room.
Yes, I do. On the previous topic, so do you want to take it now?
Okay.
It's Russ again. He says, I strongly object to experimental. Historically, the experimental track discourages deployment.
Mm. Okay.
With my own hat and not Russ's on, I don't think I agree with that, but
Randy Bush Dragon Research. I think we have a whole lot of problems in start and end dates of certificates in actual deployment that are causing serious operational messes. We've had registries, RIR registries out for significant amounts of time due to EE cert on manifest expirations, etc. This is not one little corner question. This is a general problem.
But this is an operational, you choose these numbers because conversation. That's a
How
question.
much it's operational and how much it's, I wish to channel Steve Kent about formality. You can toss a coin.
Okay. Back mic.
Dan York, just agreeing with what Russ said there, that in terms of deployment, labeling things as experimental does tend to make entities, in my experience, back off of them a bit and say, well, it's not that's not something the IETF's behind, then we're not going to do it. So I guess the question would be, if there was thought to go that way, the question is, you know, what are we just writing off BGP-SEC?
Okay. Anybody else? Damn it.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I think I know enough important points where seeing experimental on this is read as the IETF does not consider this as an important security improvement.
Okay, so 6 minutes back. Great, thanks, bye. See you in Berlin, perhaps, most likely.
took a look at her stuff. This is the same thing that they came last time and got blasted all over. Yes.
Well, kind of giving, count for yourself. The important part is
I mostly think that the whole PS versus experimental thing is bullshit.
It doesn't really matter. If you read the definition of proposed and experimental, it really doesn't match either one. That's what scared me. It's like reading it, I'm like, oh crap, that doesn't fit. Oh crap, that doesn't fit.
So I mean, Alfred didn't quite say it this way, but I suspect where he's coming from is if he takes it to the IESG as PS, I bet there will be some difficulty in moving it through because of the stuff people say at the mic about I can't deploy this in my network. And if you take it to them as experimental, I bet people will say, yeah, okay, experimental. Go. So if we want to turn it into an RFC, we don't get an RFC number for it, which is your point, then I think the expedient way to do it is to
take some of those comments and produce a draft that discusses some of the reasons why we think this is well, no. Speak for yourself. There are real concerns here that have come up often enough. There is a group within this working group that insists on saying that it's not really a problem. It can sort of work itself out. That it might be